you're feeling uncertain, overwhelmed, unable to cope right now, you're not alone, but you may be experiencing burnout. Now, how do you tell if it's stress or burnout, and what is the cost of that? And more importantly, how do you deal with it if that's where you're heading? Well, in this short video, I'm going to explain how you can spot the danger signs of burnout, and more importantly, how to get over that and turn it into something to your advantage rather than your detriment. Now, first of all, let's discuss what is burnout. Well, to do that, let's look at stress, because burnout comes from stress, but there's two different types of stress, and it's important to know the difference. The first is what we call destructive stress. And that is really where you are feeling pressured, you're feeling uncertain, you're unable to cope. And that leads to a whole set of biochemical reactions that are negative. I'll explain those in a moment. The other part of the stress is actually beneficial, and that is what we call constructive stress. And that is really where you are taking something on and you're using stress as a way to become a better person to engage in that challenge. For example, if a mammal looks at a situation, an outside scenario, as a challenge, it will start to have a biochemical reaction that will mobilize its resources. Cortisol will rise and it'll increase focus. It'll gain muscle strength. It will challenge all of its awareness into, or channel its awareness into, being able to deal with what's in front of it. Now, in the workplace, that can be something like a deadline where we rise to the occasion. It's like, I've got this. I'm going to get my team together. We're going to come up with a plan, and you start to enjoy the process. That is constructive stress. Destructive stress, if a mammal sees the external situation as something that it can't cope with or a threat, then it will lose 30% of its muscle strength, and it will have a disorientation response to its biochemistry. It'll move into what we call panic phase. In other words, it won't be looking for the solutions, it'll be dealing with the perceived threat and going into a survival fight or flight mechanism. Now, when that happens, cortisol rises, intelligence plummets. So now we're panicking, we can't even see the way out of the maze. Now, what causes destructive stress? It's a lot of the time the inability to handle uncertainty. In today's world, we're facing constant uncertainty. Uncertainty about the economy, uncertainty about our future, uncertainty about what's going to happen next week. And if you are looking at that through the lens of destructive stress, that is going to compound. Stress right now accounts for more health-related issues and costs than virtually anything else. It accounts for a lot of relationship problems. In fact, if you go to marriage.com, you'll see the #1 cause of relationship breakdown is infidelity. And a lot of people make decisions when they're stressed destructively that they then live to regret later. The second cause of relationship breakdown is financial stress, arguing over money. And again, if you're trying to control your income, or if you don't know how to master the money game, you're going to become stressed every time you spend money that you don't think you can replace, every time you look at your credit card statement or your bill. The third reason is irreconcilable differences, would you believe? That's the term they give it. Now, what does that mean? A lot of the time, destructive stress comes from us trying to control things that we cannot control, specifically other people. If you're expecting you from somebody else, I've got news for you. You're going to get stressed, and it's going to be destructive stress. If you don't know how to handle uncertainty, then you are going to be trying to control the outer world. And as we've probably found, it's very uncontrollable when it comes to trying to manage all of the different moving parts. The people that are able to take constructive stress and rise to the occasion, that don't have the age-related issues, that don't have the burnout, that don't have the lack of joy and the chronic aging, look at this through a different lens. They are able to see life through a different set of filters. It doesn't mean the outer world has to change. Their relationship to it does. And if you're feeling stressed and burnt out right now, the first thing you want to do is try to stop controlling the outer world and start working on looking at what's causing that in the inner world. In other words, your belief system. Do you believe you live in a friendly universe or a hostile universe? That isn't a question that I'm asking. It's what Albert Einstein said was the most powerful question somebody could ask or answer in their lifetime. Because if you think you live in a hostile universe, you're going to look at life through a fear-based lens and try to control everything from that perspective, and you're going to burn out, you're going to get stressed. If you believe you live in a friendly universe, you're going to see things that don't fit your pictures as bends in the river of life that you start to sail round rather than resist. If you have a situation where you think that the universe is conspiring against you, you're going to go on a downward spiral. You're going to realize the outer world follows the inner world. And for most people, they don't get that this is a self-reflective universe. You stand in front of it like a mirror. It's going to reflect back who you are. A lot of talk about the law of attraction. Oh, you get what you think about most of the time. That's correct. Earl Nightingale's greatest secret. But what most people don't realize is that the self-reflection starts with you. We all have a different wardrobe. If you're going to your wardrobe of trying to control things, getting stressed about stuff, too much stuff I can't cope with, and you're wearing those kind of emotional clothes, the outer world is going to reflect back the evidence of the wardrobe you're wearing. Another big area of chronic stress is usually encountered by people who suffer from what I call goop, or the good opinion of other people. In other words, if you're walking around trying to get people to like you consistently, you can't be authentic, so therefore you're going to have a challenge on showing up as the best version of yourself. You're always trying to adapt to what you think are other people's approval strategies to get love, connection, validation, approval, fill in the blank. Now, one of the greatest days in a human being's life is the day they become okay not being liked. Now, that doesn't mean to say you've got to be an a-hole. That's down to a value structure. It means that you're not adapting yourself to what you believe to be somebody else's approval strategy. That is a massive relief off most people's shoulders. If you are rejection averse, if you can't cope with somebody saying no, you're going to say yes to everybody because you don't want to trigger a rejection response by saying no and setting boundaries. And what that's going to do, it's going to put so much on your plate, people are going to think, oh, you're the one that never says no, I can ask you for anything. And you're going to keep on that path. Why? Because you don't have a boundary, because you don't want to risk rejection. And as a result, you get massively stressed because now you've got so many promises that you've made, you can't keep up. And now you're scared about being able to let people down. And that compounds. Is this resonating? There are so many ways people with the wrong psychology that don't have the ability to master themselves get stressed, burn out, age faster, have relationship breakdown, all because they don't know how to restructure their thinking because they're too busy trying to control the outer world. Now, I've spent the last 20 to 30 years teaching people how to master themselves, because once you have ultimate self-mastery, all of that goes away. Imagine being able to walk into a room and knowing that if somebody doesn't like you, it's their issue, not yours to fix. Imagine being able to have an economic downturn, but be able to have that sense of ultimate self-knowledge, self-certainty, that you can handle anything that comes up, that whatever the bends in the river, you know how to sail, that becomes the adventure of life, that you realize life is a growth-centric experience rather than a comfort-centric experience. That doesn't happen by chance. It's certainly not taught in school. It happens by having the right level of psychology and the right relationship to self-mastery.